Hello and welcome to the Bones Horror Podcast. This is episode 79 in the tall grass. Tonight we have with us Ewan
Hello.
and Jess.
No.
There's no Larry, not as yet. I know he was travelling back from somewhere. I don't know where.
London. I saw him actually. I saw him yesterday in person for the first time since I think 2019 or something like that.
Wow.
He seemed very well.
Yeah.
But,
so he's travelling back now. So he might well come on in a bit. So this is our kind of to the day 2 years ago. Me and Stephen sat there and we had decided. Well, I decided we were going to kind of watch Triangle and then try and talk about it. And it's episode 1. It's not the greatly recorded. We've done it terribly. It was all right. It was just me and him talking about Triangle. What a film! You know how confused I get at the best of times. So how confused I was just talking about it. I think Stephen was pretty much the same too. And then on that episode, we put it out there, and I didn't have headphones on. I had it kind of blasting through the speakers, and but people listened to it, and from that episode we had a shout out from the final guys. So like Jason Brandt gave us a shout because I spoke about what kind of why I wanted to do a podcast, and theirs was one of the ones I listened to mainly and loved it. And I thought, I don't really listen to much like that in the UK. So I thought, well, we should do me and Steve, and then it was Graham as well, and Paul obviously, and then you guys. But yeah, so the final gave us a shout out, and we got quite a lot of listeners because of that. So thank you to Jason Brandt and Jack Campese and Hunter Shea. They're all fantastic, and I listen to them every week as soon as it comes out. They go out live as well, but it's about 2 a.m. for us on a Tuesday or Wednesday night. So one day I'll get on there. So I really appreciate that. And also Dan from Sweden, who's followed us pretty much for the last year or a half or so, and he's been great as well. So thanks, Dan. So there you go. That's what I've got to say on it. 2 years. Hopefully we'll do another 2 years or whatever. But it has been growing. But the very first episodes, the first, I would say 2025, I kind of recorded with people who didn't like horror movies. So it was always really tricky to get them on board, and like they were really stingy with their boners, as you can imagine. And I wasn't. I was throwing boners around left, right, and centre, and they were really, really quite stingy about it all. So like, no, I appreciate Paul, Graham, Steve. I was hoping Steve would come on tonight. I spoke to him yesterday, but he hasn't come on yet. So this week has been a funny old week for me. Have worked a lot, but I haven't watched too much. I kind of got this VPN. I got my VPN back up and running. I got it for a year, and I was kind of flicking between loads of things. So I've got, like, what do you watch? It's going to be quite tricky tonight. There's only 1 or 2 things, but I've watched halves of lots of things on Tubi TV. So hopefully I would have caught up on it all next week, and I have loads to talk about. So what have you been up to this week, Ewan? I know you were at the cinema. Was it today?
I was at the cinema today. I went sort of early in the morning. Well, not early in the morning, like sort of like 10 o'clock in the morning to see the new Downton Abbey movie, because I felt like I had to see it. And I mean, I'll talk about it later on, but I sort of made a mistake with sort of timing and stuff, because sometimes I live in central London, and I live sort of like near Fleet Street.
Different time zone there, isn't it?
Yeah. Different time zone. But it's also like sometimes they just block off Fleet Street and the Strand, which leads to Charing Cross, for various events and stuff. And today was like a 7K marathon. So I was just sort of like, and I can't get a bus because the whole street's blocked off. So I had to walk like half an hour to get to Leicester Square. It's really annoying when that happens, because I'm just like, I'm just all sweaty by the time I get to the cinema, you know. But you know, it was an all right movie. I quite enjoyed myself, and yeah, there's not much else to report. Yeah.
Jess.
Working, and then I went to Winchester on Saturday for the vegan festival, which was not festival market. And
vegan market.
Yeah, they had the main market on, which I didn't realise because I was walking through there, a lot of stalls. I was like, these aren't vegan. This is weird.
What are they selling then? Just lettuce and tomatoes and stuff like that. Is there like?
I was walking
what
through,
is it?
And I saw a butcher's van, and then like a stall selling fish, and I was like, they're definitely not the right place. And then literally across the road, so where I was in between these two, you know, things selling dead animals, there was a Vossages, vegan sausages, stand right across in front of me. I was going to get one, but they were quite expensive, and there was a huge queue. And there wasn't actually that many stalls, so it was a bit disappointing. But I did get a nice donut. So.
Do they try and make stuff that tastes like meat, or?
You can get stuff that kind of resembles.
Or does it just taste like cucumber or something? Or...
I mean, that's what I always say to people if people are trying to go vegan, is that you have to take some things for what they are and not as a meat replacement.
Yeah, exactly.
Because if you eat, you know, vegan bacon and you think it's going to taste like bacon, obviously it's not going to. Whereas my favourite vegan bacon, I love it because it doesn't, you know, obviously taste like bacon, but I like it for what it is.
What's it taste like?
I don't know how to describe it. I'll get you some.
Yeah. No, I'm interested because I had some like vegans, not vegan. I had some vegetarian. What was it? They were sausages, but they were made out of peppers and things, and they were really nice actually. Didn't taste like meat at all, but it was really nice and different. But yeah, I do enjoy Big Mac though, to be honest. So
McDonald's vegan burger is actually really, really good.
I've heard they're not. I've seen some reviews on YouTube and that, and people saying this isn't for me.
I'm addicted. I was having them like once a week at one point.
Was that McPlant? So I can imagine it just tastes like a plant. Yeah.
It's like when I was living with my sister, and my sister suddenly wanted to go at least sort of vegetarian in some sense, and we spent about like a week like sort of cooking meals for each other that were with sort of like chicken substitute and stuff like that, and you know non-meat stuff. But I sort of compartmentalize, and I almost don't realize I'm doing it. So without realizing, I was actually having like bacon sandwiches at lunch as well, without telling her. And then she found out, and she was quite angry. I was like, "Oh, I didn't realize that counted, but I guess it does."
Oh, yeah, it don't really. It's not your main meal, is it? It's a top up.
Yeah.
All right, that's great. So vegan, I have to try that. So, in the Tall Grass, Jess's pick. One of your favourite films of all time.
I'm a bit annoyed, but I only picked it because of the face that Larry pulled when I said it.
Yeah. You like it?
I liked it up until a certain point.
Okay.
We'll go into that.
So this is a 2019 Netflix only, because I was going to purchase this because my mum's getting rid of Netflix and I didn't think we had it anymore. And it actually goes in a few days, so I managed to watch it, but you can't actually buy it, I don't think. It's 90 minutes long, and it's directed by Vincenzo. I think I got that bit right. Natali, and I think he did Splice and Cube, which I like both of those, so good on him. And it's based on the novella In the Tall Grass by Joe Hill and Stephen King, which is I own and read a few times, and it's quite different in parts to this movie. It starred, this is where I destroy names as usual, Laisla de Oliveira as Becky, Harrison Gilbertson I've got here as Travis, and Patrick Wilson as Ross, and he's from The Conjuring, etc. Insidious, that's really where I know him from, and maybe a few others.
He's probably the biggest star in the
yes, definitely. Rotten Tomatoes, what are we thinking, Jess? Because obviously it's one of your favourites, so
I already know.
Oh, okay, so Ewan.
I don't think it was that well received, so I'm gonna say in the 50s, and I think that's
Ooh.
generous.
36.
Yep.
36 free bonus, really, isn't it? So it's not done too well at all. So what did I think about this film? I wrote just my normal bullet points. I didn't go too much into it. I wrote grass.
Yep. Lots of grass.
I wrote eyes. I think someone lost their eyes. Or one or two eyes. And then I can't even read. Oh, rock, I wrote.
Right.
Rock. So basically these people, do I have my little, let me bring this up. I've got to do this. Hang on, 2 seconds. Sorry, everyone. When I bring this up. After hearing a young boy's cry for help, a sister and brother venture into a vast field of tall grass in Kansas, but soon discover there may be no way out and that something evil lurks within. So that's pretty much what's going on. So some people, they're on a trip. I think the girl's pregnant. She's going with her brother and going to stay with their aunt. So they're going to get out of the way, and it's quite a 2 or 3 day trip. Anyway, it's a long way. I'm sure they say 1,1600 miles, maybe more. It's a long old road trip. So on the way, they stop off and they hear some kind of calling from this very long grass. I don't know why the grass is so long anyway, because I've never seen grass that long.
I think it's a very American thing.
Do you have very long grass over there?
Well, of that kind, like not, it's not like a sort of exaggerated version of like normal grass, but I think in America you do have those lands of really tall grass. Yeah.
So Dan's in the group chat. He's in his pajamas. So good on you. Normally he's just sat in his white underpants, but tonight he's in his PJs. So good to have you on, Dan. We missed him last week, didn't we? Yeah, really did miss him. And I wanted to talk. I will talk about that film we watched last week as well, at some point with him, which was a good one. I can't remember what it was now, but it was good. So they go into this long grass looking for the kid, and they can't get out the long grass.
Yeah, so they hear the kid's voice saying,
"Yeah,
help me," and they stop and sort of they venture inside, and then they can't get out again.
They can't get out, and what was kind of funny about the very first episode we ever done was Triangle, and within that triangle, I learned about time loops.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now this film, I think I might be wrong, but I think there's time loops again.
Yes. Interestingly, that's not in the original story.
No.
The time loops. This is thing that they've sort of added to the film. Again, I haven't read the original story, but I'm guessing they did it just to add a bit more meat to the story. I guess.
So, do you think they're set in the same world as Triangle?
Oh, I don't. I know.
Melissa George. Maybe Melissa George will turn up.
Maybe. I mean, I haven't seen Triangle, so I'm. You
haven't?
No,
wow.
I haven't. No.
I've seen it about 8 times because I watched it at least 4 or 5 times to try and get my head around it, which I didn't. And then we did it again. We revisited on episode, was it 50, Jess, or something like that? But we did revisit it at some point, and I still didn't get what was going on. But yeah, I think they may be set in the same world. But again, it's all down to interpretation. So they get lost in there. They find a rock. There's dead animals, people being weird. And really, so Dan just said the original story felt like 15 pages long. And I think it pretty much is. It's not very long at all.
I think it was originally published in Esquire magazine. So that would make sense, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it was very. I bought it on Kindle. I think as soon as it came out, probably cost me a couple of quid. And I've read it a few times, and it's nothing like this. A little bit like there's long grass in it.
Yeah.
I think there's a rock in it. Anyway, the same kind of characters are in it. Anyway.
I mean, you've got the sort of basic sort of Stephen King setup, haven't you? You've got sort of basically putting loads of characters like sort of ants in a jar, and they're sort of trapped in that way. And that's sort of classic King. You got it like The Shining and The Mist and everything like that. It sort of has very similar concept, as well as creating something sort of like, I think David Ehrlich, who's like the critic at IndieWire, he said that Stephen King is like sort of best known for kind of creating evil in the mundane, and I don't think you get any more mundane than Grass. And I actually think that's to the film's detriment, because I think even though it tries quite hard to make Grass interesting, I kind of felt bored a lot of the time, because there were just lots of shots of grass, and I'm just like, I'm neither scared nor very interested in what the grass is doing. They they honestly tried their best. They made sort of the grass like wave like snakes and just try and sort of like tangle up. And the sort of opening shot, as we sort of have here, is kind of like, it reminded me a bit of the shot in The Shining, where it's like an aerial drop down shot of the maze, and they sort of do this similar thing with the sort of field of grass here. And it was sort of, I don't know, they try to make the grass seem intimidating, and it sort of is, but it's I didn't find it too scary, to be honest.
I thought it had so much potential, because like being lost somewhere you can't get out of is quite scary. But I think it just lost its way. I think 10 minutes in. It's just honestly, I've watched it 3 or 4 times now. And I don't really understand it. It takes some turns in it that don't make any sense. Dead birds and things like that. Is that Frozen?
Oh.
Yeah. No.
You're back now.
Okay. So I thought everyone had Frozen for a minute. I was like, well. So yes. I don't know. So Jess, first watch for you. You've never read it, I presume.
No.
Have you read a book? Just.
Right here. Next to the bed. Right.
Oh, nice! You've read that. Are you still reading it? You're still reading it? Yeah.
It's a long book, to be fair.
I read that when I was about 13, and there's some scenes in that I don't think a 13-year-old should be reading, really.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's very different to the film.
Yeah.
But no, I want to read more of Stephen King. I personally quite enjoyed this film. I think if you cut out the last half hour, it's quite a different film. There was so much they could have done with it. And as Larry's saying, the premise is a lot more scary. But as I was watching it, I did actually think that obviously 2 years ago you did Triangle, and this is just Triangle in the grass.
Yeah, I thought you picked that for that reason. I thought it was quite clever.
I had no idea that it had time loops or anything like that in it.
Yeah.
So I thought that was quite interesting. I feel like it's really well shot though. Larry said as well. I really enjoyed the visuals. Cinematically, it's gorgeous. I like that it's just grass, a creepy church, and then the abandoned bowling alley. Although they could have cut that out completely.
Yeah.
I honestly would have been happy if they had ended this film just being that there's these people and they're lost and people keep getting lost on like a loop. Like if they didn't have that ending of them getting out and, with the weird mud and grass people chanting and stuff.
Yeah.
I feel like that wasn't needed.
Yeah, it was a sort of it's interesting because I suppose it kind of owing to some of its quality. I mean, I really didn't like the film much at all, but I think the kind of you might laugh at this, Kev, but the sort of interpretive angles it had at not sort of explaining everything was actually quite well handled, in that even though a lot of it was very ridiculous and you can kind of guess what's happened, there's not like sort of streams of exposition, like explaining everything that you're seeing. They just sort of leave it open, which is actually a good thing. Saying that, I did feel like even with that, I wasn't that interested in knowing more. I, either the because they come across, for those who haven't seen it, they come across a rock sort of in the middle, a big rock with sort of various inscriptions on it from like ancient civilizations. The assertion is that it's from like an ancient cult, or maybe it's aliens. I mean, I kind of thought it was aliens at first, and then this ancient cult like came around and sort of like took advantage of the people who went in the tall grass. But to be honest, I was sort of I mean, you were saying it was visually interesting, but there were shots that I was quite intrigued by, but it was sort of, I don't know, I found it was quite let down just by the sort of the infinity of the grass. There's just so much grass and green, and just sort of like it felt very samey to me. And I know that's the point. It's meant to be a sort of repetitive time loop situation, and you're meant to feel trapped. And people go through sort of psychological meltdowns and stuff like that. But it was sort of, I don't think they took full advantage of that, and I just didn't find it that that interesting. I mean, even with the build, I mean, the church was quite cool, and how they sort of loop back to the church. But I was like, yeah, the sort of buildings that just suddenly pop up out of nowhere, it just felt a bit convenient to me. And it was like, oh, is there a purpose to this, or is it just there? Or is it just literally a kind of a break in the narrative, just to make our characters either talk to each other or have a break from the grass for a while, and then just sort of and then move on after that. And I found the characters also equally boring. They had a few moments, and it's funny how I think a lot of movies and TV since Game of Thrones have taken a kind of incest route, where they're like, oh yeah, it's a brother and sister, oh, and their ex-husband, oh yeah, the brother wants to fuck the sister, so that makes it. I'm just kind of so bored of that kind of storyline, because it's just sort of, I mean, it's gross, obviously, but it's sort of like, I don't know, it's kind of trying to put something weird.
It's an American film, though. That's kind of. I'm not saying it's normal over there, but maybe it does. maybe it does go on.
I think accusations of inbreeding can come into England as well. Like, I think like Norfolk.
That's everywhere.
Yeah. But you're right. I think there's like, I don't know, that there's a suggestion of like really close family, and the family not accepting the fact that she got pregnant, or that she can look after, or I mean, I really don't really understand the sort of moral messages that they were trying to sort of throw in there. Like, should she keep the baby? Should she keep it? Oh no, I want to be a mother. And it's like, okay, so your entire arc around this sort of being in the tall grass, being trapped, is so you can arrive at the conclusion that you actually want to have the kid in the first. It kind of just, the themes didn't really gel with me, and some of the dialogue was just piss poor as well. It was just sort of, it was so sort of like functional. And then you've got I think Travis was the most sort of interesting character, because it sort of poses a kind of hero, although it kind of, given like his backstory about him wanting her to abort the baby and stuff, there's no sort of like indication that he has like any malice in him, which I thought kind of sort of brought the movie a bit down, or made him slightly unconvincing, because he is just heroic in this moment, and shows no flicker of that menace at all, which made it sort of slightly confused. But also he looked a lot like Leonardo DiCaprio, like in the mid-noughties. It was really strange. But I suppose he was the most interesting, because he was the one who sort of, I don't know. He seems like to genuinely care about what's going on, and he seemed like the sort of moral character, the sort of the moral stronghold of the film. But yeah, even he was sort of, I don't know. I found this film for the most part quite boring, but it wasn't unbearably boring, because I think they threw interesting things in there, and I could watch it pretty much the whole way through without pausing. So that's a good thing. But I'm going to keep returning to this. I was just so bored by the grass. It was just so much grass, and I was just like, I just want something, anything else. And I think even like the script writers or the director were just like, yeah, we need something else. So you put a building there, that's more interesting.
Yeah,
let's just go there. Yeah.
Well, it's a novella. There's not a lot in it, so they've had to add on an awful lot. So like, Larry's just put on there, the time loops were a good concept, but I feel that this film would have served better as a short. The ending should have been different, maybe reverting back to the beginning to show that hopelessness.
Yeah, I agree. I think they didn't have enough. They didn't have enough material to make it into a sort of an hour and a half, hour 40 film, and I think it suffers from that.
So like, Larry's given it 5 boners really, and not enough grass for him.
Not enough grass.
So
what are you talking about, Lawrence?
He wanted more grass, and he probably would have given it 8 boners if it had another load of, maybe longer grass, even longer grass,
even longer.
Yeah, in the very tall grass. Yeah, so lots of time loops. Spoiler alert: she does escape the time loop, I think, and
don't know how though, to be honest.
It makes sense.
Different version.
Yeah.
Of her.
Yeah, so like, Dan's saying Ewan doesn't have a lawn, that's for sure.
In my current place of residence, I don't have a lawn, no. But
if he did have a lawn, he'd have very, very short grass, or even like AstroTurf.
Yeah,
something like that. He wouldn't have very long.
I don't have any plants in the flat either. I might be really anti-plant. I might really have a really strong prejudice against.
It's just got
life.
It's just got loads.
It's
got racks of beef and sausages everywhere.
Bacon.
Yeah, bacon.
Bacon hanging from the ceiling. Yeah. Lovely. Yep. So now, if you were to rate this, Jess, we're at 28 minutes in, which should have been what the film was. So, what do you think?
I'd probably give it a 5 as well.
Yeah.
Like I liked how it looked. Again, too much grass. But when they were outside of the grass, like by the church, and there's a really nice shot where he comes out of the church, and it's like panning up, and you can just see the church in the background of the sky, and it looks really nice. I was like, yeah. But otherwise, the stories, yeah.
Do you like the grass? Is it long enough for you?
It was average grass. Yeah, I'll give the grass a 5 out of 10.
5.
Yeah.
I'm going to give it a 6 because I found it quite interesting. It was different. I did like the guy from The Conjuring, Patrick Wilson. I thought he was great, and he did a little bit of singing in it as well because he likes to sing in most of his movies, doesn't he? If he can, and I really enjoyed most things he's in. He was in, what was the film where the cannibals and the cowboy one? What was that? In the Western.
Oh.
It was quite brutal in parts. I think we reviewed it once. What was that called? Anyway, I'm sure Larry will tell us in a sec. But yeah, I think he saved it. I thought again that the Leonardo DiCaprio guy, he was really good. The pregnant lady was terrible, I thought. Yeah, so I'd give it a 6, and I must like it because I've watched it 3 or 4 times, and I'm bound to watch it again one day. I would probably buy it, to be honest. I'd probably add it to the collection if it came out. Yeah, so that's for me. Ewan, so did you rate it already? I'm thinking 3 with you, but
I'd give it a 4.
Okay.
I'd give it a 4. Because the thing is that I was entertained in parts, and I as I said before, it wasn't unbearable. If it was unbearable, I'd give it a 3 or a 2 or a 1 or whatever. But because I could, because I did simply watch it for an hour 40 without, I think I went away once, but that was pretty much it. And that, again, they throw in certain curious things. So when they arrive at the building, you're suddenly interested about what the building is and what's going on there. And I think my favorite shot, it's an intensely VFX shot, but it's the one where the sort of ground below the rock opens up and there are loads of sort of bodies under branches and stuff like that. It's sort of like kind of like an underworld sort of situation. I actually that was the one shot I really liked, because it was quite hellish, and that was like the one time I was like even sort of vaguely scared. But I think that is the problem with this film, is that it tries to make grass scary, and unfortunately, in my experience, I've never felt that grass was ever scary. But again, that might be due to my prejudice against plants, but it's too...
I think so. I think you've got a real problem with plants, mate. So what? Yeah, we better not have any more films with plants in, really.
No plants.
No plants for you in. Larry's putting there. Dan's putting there. Why is Larry in the chat? Larry, have you read Tentagel? Now, I don't think Larry has. I have, obviously, and I would like a signed copy of that, or even a signed poster. If I can get Steve Barnard wrote it. Barnard, I think it is. And it is proper mad. If you haven't read it out there, listeners, go and read it. I think Larry could make this film. I think he could make it work. But it's great. So hopefully Larry will read it soon. So we're looking at what? About 5, isn't it? 4, 5 for this, really. Not the greatest film. I know it's your favourite, Jess, but it's all right. If you like grass, you like Patrick Wilson, it's for you. It's a good book, though. It's an interesting book. So we're about that time where we better take a look at Dan's hot pick. Right. I bet you guys haven't watched this.
No.
So, Dan's hot pick. Shall I tell you what it's all about? Anna takes over the duties of her father, a projectionist at a declining movie theatre. Unbeknownst to her, the audience watching the film at the theatre is being murdered by a black-gloved killer. So, this film, it was on Shudder. I don't know if it's on UK Shudder or not, because I watched it through my VPN. It reminded me. Has anyone here seen Demons?
I don't think so, no.
No, so Demons is set in a cinema, and it had a little bit of a similar feel at times, but not kind of like Demons. So there are people in this cinema, and this guy with a bag appears, and he's just hanging about. And it's just a group of people, really, who've gone to the cinema. There's a girl there. Her dad needs to get home, and the guy who was going to take over as projectionist for the night, he's not turned up, so the daughter's going to have to do it. But this killer is there, and he's kind of taken out people in very, very brutal ways. I was hoping Larry had seen this, because it's very, very good. It's from Uruguay, come out in 2020. In Spanish. I didn't know Uruguayans spoke Spanish. I thought they might have spoke Uruguayan, but it's in Spanish. So obviously I had to do a bit of reading, which is all right. And this guy the killer seems to collect eyeballs and enjoy eating eyeballs. So from Dan, he's put on here that he really liked it. It was a simple movie, and he loved the colours and the sounds. And it's just an easy movie with lots of kills. It's a proper kind of old-fashioned slasher, but done in a way. There's a couple of scenes with the eyeballs that are hard to watch and done really well. Jess, I think you might like this film. It is brutal in parts and it's quite funny in parts, but the killer, I don't know why the killer, I don't really explain unless I miss something, why the killer's doing what he's doing. But there is a scene where two people are kissing and he seems to ram a kind of metal stake thing straight through both their heads and join them together. But it's really well, it's beautifully shot at times. I can't fault it, and it's probably one of our own actually at some point if I can get hold of it. I think it was on Arrow. It said, so I will go and buy that. I'd love to hear. Did you watch it, Larry? Are you still in the chat? What you really thought about it? If you did, if you didn't, again, yeah. So Jess, so Dan's put you'd love it. It's got lots of colours in. It is beautifully shot, and you've got. Have you got a VPN?
Are you infatuated with colours, Jess?
Jess loves colours. And what did we watch last week as Dan's hot pick? Was it Rigor Mortis?
Yeah.
Was that last week? So again, I don't know what you thought about that, Dan, but that confused the hell out of me. It was good. It was dark. Lots of it didn't make sense. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about it really, but I didn't buy it this time, so I can't remember what that was on. Might have been on Shudder as well. I can't remember. Anyway, that was all right. So I've got nothing else to say about that film. I would actually give it 7 or 8, but the scene with the eyeballs, and I won't tell you actually this eyeball scene because when you watch it, you'll know what I'm talking about. But it's quite hard to watch. So now, how many boners do you give it, Dan? Just wondering there. It might pop up in a minute. Yeah. Okay, so he's put just move on from Rigor Mortis. Yeah. So it's about that time to move on to what we watched this week.
What have you been watching?
No, seriously, what have you been watching?
Right. Yeah, as I said earlier, I've watched bits of films. Now, I put the VPN on, and there was obviously with Shudder, it becomes a thing of beauty when you put a VPN on it and it comes from America. And I Joe Bob Briggs, do you know who he is, you and Jess?
No.
Now, he is an American from Texas. I think he used to kind of, we don't really have anything like that in the UK, but he would introduce a film and then maybe 15 minutes in, talk about and give you some more information, a bit like a podcast, really. And then you'd play a bit more of the film and then talk a bit more about it. And I love watching him. So in the UK, we hardly get any of the movies that actually come out in the States due to licensing or whatever in this country. So we will get maybe just the Joe Bob Briggs bit, and it don't work in that. So you're just literally getting a few minutes of it. Well, it's probably a 3-hour film. A 2-hour film would be 3 hours or hour and a half. There'd be an extra 30 minutes, 45 minutes in it. So one of the first ones that came out, I think, on Shudder was it was like a marathon night. So I think there was like 3 or 4 films all in a row, and he'd introduced them and stayed with it just for Shudder. I think Shudder was quite new at the time. So the first one I watched was The Tourist Trap, but it's just called Tourist Trap. Have you ever seen that? I think Jess might be able to bring something up. Really about some girls, and they go off and a guy have a road trip, and they come across this place where they're like mannequins. They're like mannequins. They stop there, and these mannequins kind of attack them. But one of the mannequins or people has got kind of supernatural powers that can make things move and kill them. Really interesting, really funny when Joe Bob does his bit. I think it's about 2.5 hours long with Joe Bob's bit. So, And there's so many for me to watch because I watched quite a few of them when I had the BVM before, but I thought, Tourist Trap I'd never seen actually. And as you can see, is it 70s maybe? 80s?
Yeah, looks very 70s, 80s. Yeah.
So it's crazy. I love 70s, 80s movies anyway. So yeah, it's just well worth a visit. If it's any of that Joe Bob stuff, get a VPN if you're in the UK. Watch it. It's for £5 a month, and you'll get, I don't know how many films are on there. Joe Bob's introducing now, probably 40, 50. I think series 4's out now on his normal series, but there's specials as well. So I would watch that. It's a really interesting, fun, weird thing to watch. That's pretty much all I've watched this week because there's other bits I am watching. Like there's 2 or 3 Stephen King bits I'm making. I'm doing Sleepwalkers. You ever seen Sleepwalkers?
No.
Again, I'll talk about that more next week. That's kind of got incest in, to be honest. Yeah, another American thing about some shape-changing creatures, and I will talk about that. That's pretty much all I've watched. So I'm hoping you've watched a bit, Jess, other than Friends. Really. Which is great. So, like, Dan's just come up. He's given it 8 very strong boners to a colourful
Last
and lovely
Matinee.
sounds from Uruguay. The Last Matinee. Watch it, guys. It's really good. I'm surprised Larry's not watched actually. So what you watched, Jess? Come on. Much? You've been too busy.
I haven't actually watched Friends. I watched a couple episodes of Sheldon yesterday, but I've mostly been playing Overwatch again.
Really?
Do you know what?
Yeah.
The 3 boys are all playing that today.
Yeah.
Because Ollie's gone top 500 again, or 200,
Nice.
whatever it is. Yeah. So
he can come carry us then.
he's somewhere else on it, isn't he? But yeah, he should take it up. Really, he don't do anything else.
Yeah.
Go and win some money. But I wish I could play it. I was the one that bought that. I bought it on my PC, and I thought this looks great, and it is great. But I'm useless.
Yeah.
Everyone's too fast for me. By the time I thought about it, I'm dead. And it's like
it's very
everyone's carrying me, so it's like, what's the point? So
yeah, it's good. It's because the second one comes out soon, so everyone's playing it again.
So I was playing the new wrestling game on the Xbox Series X, which looks fantastic actually. But I've been playing that, so having a bit of a wrestle online. So yeah, that is fun. That is fun. So nothing else, Jess?
No, not really.
God, we're only at 43 minutes. We have to really drag this out, you. So
I'll try. So I finished off the last episodes of Ozark, season 4, part 2. I sort of finished those over the weekend.
Yeah.
It's a very, if you haven't watched it, it's a very good.
Never seen it. Never seen any of
It's
them.
very good. All of it's on Netflix. It's basically about a sort of money launderer or a money laundering family, actually, led by Jason Bateman, who plays a kind of almost like an everyman father, except he's not. He's very much embedded in a sort of drug cartel which he launders money for. But it's a very interesting series because it's very sort of. I mean, there's been a lot of comparisons to Breaking Bad, probably because Jason Bateman also used to be a comedy actor, and now he's very much in the dramatic side here, much like Bryan Cranston and Walter White. But I think it's much more like The Sopranos in that sort of, it's very much focused in that sort of family dynamic and how you bring up a family whilst you're essentially doing like the worst crimes of humanity. And I think there's a kind of, and because it's so sort of cold and calculated in how it presents like murder and like torture, and it's so sort of there's lots of blues, and it's filmed so coldly in the sense that it's very much a very nihilistic show in many ways. And it's ended with this last 7 episodes, and I think a few people on Twitter complained about the ending. Now, any TV ending is always going to be dissatisfying in some way. I think the only perfect ending to a TV series that exists is Breaking Bad, and some people
moaned about that. Yeah, people
people
moaned about that. Yeah.
But I think the ending, even though there was a note of dissatisfaction in some ways, mainly the very end was slightly dissatisfying, but I think largely it was very well handled, because it's sort of, you get you get these themes of like mainly classism, and how sort of the American system treats wealthy families, well-functioning families over poorer and more dysfunctional families. They tend to favor the wealthier people rather than the poorer people. And it's very much about that split in America, or at least this particular section of America. And there's this great character, Ruth Langmore, played by Julia Garner, who's sort of rising in fame in recent years, and she's a kind of sort of white trash, but she's very, very intelligent, and starts working for these wealthy money launderers, and she becomes essentially the sort of MVP of the whole series. And she's so good, and the actress who plays her is really good. But it's a great series, and it's worth watching. And as I said,
you need a beer, mate.
Yeah, probably. I also watched, as I said before, Downton Abbey: A New Era, which is the second movie spin-off from the...
Is that the alien invasion one?
I think that's something else, Kev. I mean, I'm sure you'd be more interested if there were an alien invasion involved.
I know she is. She was in Harry Potter.
Maggie Smith,
Yeah.
who plays Violet Grantham, I think. She's very much the sort of MVP of the whole thing, really. She comes out with such sort of witty remarks, and sort of I think one line in this film, she says she's about as attractive as a veruca. This is just great. But it's very much like, again, it's sort of set in the late 20s, follows this like family and their servants in this very opulent mansion in somewhere in Yorkshire. And it kind of this film kind of splits between storylines. So you've got half the family going off to the south of France to investigate a villa which was left to one of the relatives. And then you've got another storyline which stays in Downton Abbey, where a film crew wants to suddenly film there. And I think that is actually the more interesting storyline, in that you get to see how sort of filmmaking in the late 20s was, and you see the kind of the friction between during the transition period between sort of silent movies and the talkies. And I found that aspect the most interesting. It isn't perfect. It's probably far from perfect, but it's especially the first half hour is a lot of really badly written exposition. But once it gets out of that, it grows into its own thing, and it's much better than the first film. Because the first film was basically just an extended episode of Downton Abbey. But with this one, there's sort of multiple storylines. It's almost like an entire season crammed into 2 hours, which on paper doesn't sound that great, but it actually works because it makes it constantly entertaining. So I quite enjoyed it. I thought it was very fun. What was the other thing? I can't remember now. Hang on, let me check my list.
I wanted to hear more. Was there demons in it?
No, there was no demons, unfortunately.
No demons.
There were sort of demon personalities, I suppose.
Okay. Not very nice people.
Yeah. The staircase, which is quite an interesting one, because it's based on the Netflix docuseries, which did very well. I
enjoyed that. Is that the guy? How I got it? His missus went down the stairs.
Yeah, and there was a massive investigation. I've got to say, I'm really not into true crime docuseries. Not really. I mean, I watched the first episode of The Staircase, and I was sort of like, I don't know what it is. I think there's just too much reality involved, and you've got so many facts and so many people to try and remember. And obviously, because it's a docuseries, you've got to try and pay attention. And there's this whole extended, like, 10-minute thing where they're explaining the sort of genealogy of this family. And I'm just like, oh, I'm just falling asleep and not paying attention to what they're talking about. But which is why I liked this, because it's a sort of a fictionalized version of that series. That's coming to Sky Atlantic on Thursday.
Okay.
Stars Colin Firth, stars Tony Collette, Michael
He's
Stolberg,
great. Yeah.
Sophie Turner, who I was very surprised by, because I don't think I've seen Sophie Turner in anything but Game of Thrones, where she plays Sansa Stark.
X-Men.
An X-Men, yeah, okay, I did see.
That was terrible, though, wasn't
it? Well, Apocalypse was terrible. Was she in Days of Future Past? I can't remember now. I can't
But then
remember.
she had her own one, didn't she?
Did she have her own one?
yeah.
That was terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't see that one.
I personally quite enjoyed all of them, but then I'm like that with like the newer Star Wars films. I like all of them. Just saying. But, shoot me if you want. But
yeah. And Juliette Binoche as well, who's mainly known in sort of around Europe, but she's sort of done a few Hollywood movies as well. But I actually quite enjoyed this, mainly because structurally it kind of made more sense to me, because it's sort of in the first episode of the Netflix series, I was sort of confused as to who everyone was, and I was kind of put off by like all the sort of, I suppose I should have been prepared for this, but in the first episode they really put the horrific images on screen of like the sort of so the basic premise is that it's about this wealthy author who lives in this massive house, and his wife suddenly falls down the stairs and she's left in a sort of bloody mess at the bottom. And in the Netflix series, you see like all the kind of lacerations of the scalp and all the bloody remains. And I suppose I wasn't really prepared for it when I was watching it, so I was like, I'm not really into this.
That wasn't the first one, though, was it?
I think it was the first one.
I thought he had two wives that fell downstairs.
Well, I've only seen the first episode, so it's sort of
okay.
That was the only. So, but I like this because it was sort of it sort of made more sense to me. They do jump around in time, but they make it sort of chronologically accessible, which I don't think they did with the first episode in the Netflix series. And plus, the Netflix series was like 13 episodes. I was like, I can't go through all of this. Whereas in this dramatized series, it's 8 episodes, I think, and they really sort of like make everything clear about what's going on whilst maintaining a certain mystery around it, which I thought was very good. Colin Firth is a bloody good actor, I have to say, because I mean, I've only really seen him in romantic dramas or rom-coms or whatever. I know he's done a few things like I think in A Serious Man, or not A Serious Man, A Simple Man, or A Something Man, where he plays as something more dramatic, because he can do dramatic, but it's usually in that romantic scenario, whereas here it's far more you see the sort of how good an actor he is, because he's so sort of kind of mentally stressed by the whole experience, and you're not entirely sure what Dan has mentioned the Kingsman and Colin Firth. Yeah, that's true, but also I think that's still in the boundaries of comedy, I think. But it's sort of as well as being very, very British. I mean, Colin Firth is kind of like a staple of like British culture, whereas here he's playing someone who's very, very American, almost Trumpian in a weird way. But he's sort of he's very, very good. Tony Collette is also very good. Again, I've only seen one episode, so I feel like it's gonna expand on her. But
so he plays an American. And
yeah.
He's got a good accent.
I think so.
Yeah.
There was one weird moment where they're sort of all around the table with the family drinking champagne out of a goblet, which is really weird. But it was sort of, there was a moment where he just suddenly turns British sort of intentionally, as like he was trying to do, like the character is doing like a mock British
Yeah.
accent, which I think is a weird, like it sometimes happens when British actors play Americans. For some reason their character has to turn to British for some reason, and then go. I think it happened with House when Hugh Laurie played House. He often turned to British at times to sort of make a mockery of it. I don't know why. I think that's just sort of something meta for the audience. Maybe he's sort of like, oh, you know, he's British and he's pretending to be a British man, but he is actually British. It's interesting, but no, I thought this was very strong for Colin Firth. I don't think I've seen him in anything as dark as this either, and I think throughout the episodes you get to see how good he really is. And yeah, I think it's a solid series so far, and it sort of makes more sense to me than the Netflix series did. And I'm more interested in finding out. And I have a problem with true crime documentaries anyway. I just think there's just so much voiceover and just so many facts to learn, and there are so many episodes to sort of wade through that I just become very sort of disinterested quite quickly. It was the same with sort of Making a Murderer. I don't think I got past the first episode of that. I think the only one that I have done is Tiger King, but I think that was only because, I mean, it's completely crazy, obviously, but it's also like everyone. I mean, it was the lockdown hit. It was like the first lockdown hit, and I was like, okay, I feel obliged to watch all of these now. But I think other than that, I don't think I've really watched any true crime documentaries like fully. But no, I enjoyed this dramatization. I thought it was very good.
Nice. So is that it? Yeah,
pretty much.
So you have a think about next week's. Now,
oh yes,
Dan's hot pick is on Shudder, I think, Jess.
Okay.
And it's a story called Slacks about a possessed pair of jeans. So when a possessed pair of jeans begin to kill staff of a trendy clothing store. So Slacks, SLAXX.
I nearly chose that for this week.
I made a great main feature. I think The Last Matinee would have made a great main feature, to be honest. So yeah, Dan's hot pick will be Slacks. You don't really watch the hot picks, and I don't blame you.
No, I watched one. I watched Coca D Coca, which is
that was great, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's our kind of hot pick for next week. Slacks. It has a deeper meaning. So let's go Slacks from Dan. So I'm looking forward to that deeper meaning. That's what I'm all about, Dan. Deeper meanings. So main feature next week, which will be our episode 80. What you thinking, Ewan? And
I'm thinking Funny Games.
Oh wow!
Specifically the one from 1997, not the American remake.
Not the American one.
No, the I think
that's
it's
on
either
Arrow.
French or German. I think it's either French or German from Michael Haneke. It's a great film.
Is that in foreign? It's in foreign then.
Yeah.
Oh no,
again,
not
I'm
foreign
again. If it's in German or French, but it's a really good film though.
Yeah. I don't speak foreign that well. That's all.
Yeah, but you got subtitles. I think.
Oh, okay. I always struggle with the foreign bit. Like, yeah. So we're doing what was it called again? What was it called?
Funny Games.
Funny Game. I've definitely seen the American one, which I really liked actually.
See the original one.
Quite brutal at times.
Yeah, I think it's not from 1997. The original.
1997. Funny Games. Okay. We do tend to get a lot more views if they're popular films. Know that? Like it's ridiculous. Last week's didn't do well at all, but that was a foreign film. So we'll see. But yeah, Funny Games. I've heard great things about the 1997 version, and I haven't seen it. So, thanks everyone for listening. It's been a great 2 years, and I'm glad you stuck with us all that time. And if please comment on, or leave us a review, but don't leave us bad reviews, because that's not good. But leave us good reviews, like that were really good, but don't say we're really shit, because that wouldn't be good. All right, so if you want to follow us on Twitter, it's the Bones Horror Pod. Fuck off Facebook. Yeah, I think I've said that before. And then we've got Instagram. It's the Bones Horror Pod as well. And then you want to email us. I don't know. Want us to watch a screener or whatever. It's the Bones. It's boneshorrorpod@gmail.com. So yeah, we'll be back next week with Funny Games from 1997, which is in foreign, and that will be our main feature. Thanks everyone for listening. See you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.